Minerals are considered a micronutrient, meaning that they are found in the foods that we eat. Minerals and many vitamins are considered micronutrients, but the effect that minerals and vitamins have on our health is anything but micro. This class was originally intended to be vitamins and minerals, but there are about 90 essential nutrients that are required for our health, and even if I were to give each one only about 45 seconds, we'd have a hard time covering them. I originally designed this class to be taught at a Foot Zone conference, and I was given an hour to speak. When I started preparing this, I realized that was not going to work, and I quickly switched to just minerals, and then I quickly realized that even the 22 minerals could not be talked about in 1 hour. So I ended up picking my favorites, or the ones that I feel like are the most important and will change your health the quickest. But I would highly recommend a study in depth of the other minerals that we're not going to cover today, or at least glancing at them and getting to know them a little bit. Couple things that really got me interested in minerals. The first one was a long, long time ago. I was given a cassette tape by a guy named Dr. Wallach, and it's a presentation entitled Dead Doctors Don't Lie. I listened to it while I was driving, and it quickly became one of my favorite things to listen to. It's an absolutely fascinating discussion. He is a boy who grew up on a farm, I think it was in Wisconsin, and he was fascinated by how they would use minerals to prevent diseases in animals, and sometimes they would even use it to cure things in animals. And he thought this was just absolutely fascinating. He did grow up to become a vet, and he started to notice that a lot of these things could probably, if they fixed animals, would probably work for humans as well. And he tried unsuccessfully to get several papers published, and nobody really wanted to listen to him, so went out and became an ND. Then he opened up a practice and started practicing what he was preaching, and he was wildly successful. As you can imagine, he had a lot of success with this, and that made a lot of people want to come and see him. But he entitled this presentation Dead Doctors Don't Lie because doctors on average have a lifespan of 55 years, while the American couch potato has a lifespan of 71 years. Dr. Wallach attributed this to stress. He figured that the stressful lifestyle that doctors lead was actually causing some of their mineral loss and deficiencies, and that was leading to their earlier death. Um, I think it's a very interesting thought, and he may be right, but I definitely think it's a catchy title, and it was definitely a wonderful program. I believe that it is available to listen to on YouTube. You can check that out. The other thing that really got me interested in minerals was when I became pregnant with my sixth child. My fifth pregnancy had been an absolute nightmare. I had not felt good for most of it, and I had encountered some rather interesting health problems from previous pregnancies and surgeries that had made life pretty hard. I was definitely not looking forward to doing another pregnancy. And unfortunately, within days of getting pregnant, I became very sick. Very, very, very sick. And emotionally, I was not in a good place. I was not doing well at all. And a friend of mine suggested that I go down to Logan, which is about 45 minutes from where I lived, and take a class. It was a pregnancy and prenatal nutrition class. I felt really strongly that we needed to go. My husband was like, "We've had 5 kids. What are we doing?" I think he expected it to be more like a Lamaze or like breathing exercises class. He's like, "I'm pretty sure we got this figured out by now." But I drug him with me. We go down to this class. We walk in, and the lady's starting to talk about salt deficiency, and she's describing all these things for what a salt deficiency looks like, and I'm sitting there thinking, check, check, check. This is me. This is me. Wow, holy cow. Um, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, I'm pregnant, so should I be taking large amounts of salt? And I have no idea where I heard that or where I picked that up. I think it's just something that has been said for so long that I just kind of accepted it and didn't really think about it. But I raised my little hand and I'm like, okay, so I think I might be salt deficient, but how would I know if I'm salt deficient? And she asked me a few questions and she goes, yeah, you sound like you're really salt deficient. So she goes, would you mind getting, if I got you a glass of salt water? I said, no, that's fine. She goes in the kitchen, she gives me this glass of water and she has me drink it. And she says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how salty was that? And I kind of sat for a minute like, well, I honestly couldn't tell there was salt in that water. And she's like, what? And I'm like, it wasn't salty. I couldn't taste the salt at all. And she says, I put a tablespoon of salt in that water. And she says, wow, she goes, you are definitely salt deficient and you need to take a tablespoon of salt in water every day until you can taste it and then cut that in half and do that until it becomes salty and then just cut it back to where it's not salty. She says, but while you're doing this, while you're taking these mass amounts of salt, you have got to also take as many fruits and vegetables as you possibly can. We're going to talk about why she gave me that advice. But that is hugely important. If you are going to increase your salt intake, you have got to increase the amounts of vegetables and fruits that you're getting, or learn to salt your fruits and vegetables would be even better, but we'll cover that. So let's talk about salt a little bit. Salt is really, really important. Here's what salt does for you. Salt creates hydrochloric acid in the stomach, and hydrochloric acid is used to break down food. So if you are lacking hydrochloric acid in your stomach, you're going to have all kinds of digestive issues, but you're also missing out on the absorption of a whole bunch of other minerals, anything else that you're eating, because your body's not digesting that food properly. A side note on salt is when you are severely salt deficient and you're not digesting a particular meal, your body's not producing that hydrochloric acid, you can take some apple cider vinegar and that will act as a hydrochloric acid and help your digestion. It's not a good idea to do on a constant basis, but it's a good thing for once in a while. The human body can actually store 6 to 8 ounces of salt. And I did not mean to do that. But anyway, it can store 6 to 8 ounces of salt in the bones. And when you get sick, your body will use that. When you have diarrhea, your body will go through about 1/3 of an ounce of salt a day. So it's important not only to have enough salt for today, but to have enough that our body can put some aside for later. A salt deficiency physically, interestingly enough, it looks like nausea and vomiting. Morning sickness, anyone? I don't think that a salt deficiency is the only cause of morning sickness, but it definitely was a game changer for me. Upping my salt with that last pregnancy was a game changer. Another one is headaches. And I've heard so many people say, yeah, I get pregnancy headaches. It could be nothing more than a salt deficiency. You know, one of the things we didn't cover because I skipped past slides too fast was that salt is also used to create protein in the blood. And when you get pregnant, your body produces 1/3 to 1/4 to 1/3. That was backwards. Anyway, 1/4 to 1/3 of your blood volume. It makes that again as a reserve. It will use it throughout your pregnancy, but this is done within the first few days of pregnancy. It's very important that we realize that this puts a huge demand on the body for salt because it uses it to build that protein. It also puts a demand on the body for iron, and it puts a demand on the body for electrolytes and water. Now, a pregnant woman needs more water anyway because she's constantly refreshing that amniotic fluid. So the demand for salt is much higher for a pregnant woman than a regular person. Back to our salt deficiencies. It also can cause confusion. There is a lot of people will say they have pregnancy brain or brain fog when they're pregnant. I get brain fog and confusion when I'm not pregnant, and a lot of times it's because I'm not watching my amounts of salt. And it's amazing how fast salt can turn that around. A loss of energy and drowsiness and fatigue, these are also a sign that you are salt deficient. By the time you have loss of energy, drowsiness, and fatigue, you're getting to where I was. You're pretty salt deficient. I was doing all of these as well as muscle weakness, spasms, cramps, almost constantly. And cramping when you're pregnant, even though it was just a salt deficiency and it wasn't particularly scary, it was scary emotionally and mentally because I constantly thought I was having a miscarriage or starting to have one. Definitely not fun. Beyond this, a salt deficiency gets even scarier. You start to do the seizures and then eventually a coma. So salt deficiency is definitely something not to be played around with, and salt is incredibly important. One thing that I find interesting is that in the scriptures, Christ refers to himself as the salt of the earth, the bread of life, and the living water. These are things that are essential for life, and they're things that we're being told not to eat or to limit. Bread isn't good for us anymore. People are wheat and gluten intolerant, and we should limit our amount of salt. And it's really hard to find a good, clean source of water anymore. But these are 3 things that are incredibly important for our health. And salt is massively important. I could give an entire speech on whole wheat bread, but I'm not going to. I don't buy grocery store bread very often. Um, I do occasionally, but it is a lot harder to digest than regular whole wheat homemade bread, and that's, as I said, I could teach a whole nother class on that one. But it's not a topic for today. Just a side note that I thought was very interesting. Emotionally, though, a salt deficiency. Now, bear in mind, you're already having problems digesting. You don't have any energy. You feel crappy all the time. And we're going to add to that, we're going to add sadness. And sadness, definitely something that I felt all the time, but mine was more of a depressive state. And the irritability, definitely. I knew I was grumpy. I knew I was easily irritated, but I couldn't help it. And I had no idea why. The depression, this was definitely me. I was battling depression, and I've battled depression a couple times through my life. This was not fun. Anxiety and panic attacks. These two we're going to see throughout this presentation a lot. They are earmarks of mineral deficiency, which tells us something about the world at the moment. We are seeing so much more anxiety and so many more panic attacks. I had, up until this point of my life, never done a panic attack. With this pregnancy, I had done a couple of them, and I tell you what, they are not fun. They are awful, and I was very glad to find a cause and to be able to eliminate that, because I don't recommend those for anyone. Watching your salt. Okay, types of salt. There are lots and lots of different types of salt on the market, and I wanted to go into them just a little bit just because there's so much out there. It can be so confusing, and there are a few things that you really do need to know. The one there in the middle, the pink one, is called a Himalayan salt. It's become really popular on the market, and I quite like it. I love the flavor of it. It's typically one that's sold in a grinder, and it's kind of fun to grind your own salt. And so Himalayan salt I would recommend. When I look for a salt, I'm looking for one that's going to contain other vitamins and minerals as well. I'm not just looking to get my salt. The flavor is important to me, but I'm looking for those other minerals as well. There is a new salt on the market. It's called green salt, and it has become extremely popular. It is made by dehydrating salicornia and grinding it into a powder. Now, salicornia is not a form of salt, but rather a plant, and it has many names, but the most popular one is salicornia. This plant is grown in extremely salty conditions, and it contains a ton of other vitamins and minerals. And one of the things it's most known for is its vitamin B3, which a lot of women really, really need. So this is probably why it's become so wildly popular. But what you need to know about green salt is, because it's not actually a salt, it's a plant grown in salty conditions. It only contains about 50% as much sodium as salt. So if you're going to take green salt, you need to take twice as much of it. The teacher of my nutritional class, she recommended Celtic salt, and I have never tried it. She claimed that it had a higher mineral content. I've done some research on it. Their label does not say that it has any other types of minerals in it, and I can't find anything about it. But it's possible. Anything is possible. It's one I would like to try someday, but I do have a type that I like, and it's this one right here. It's called Real Salt. It's put out by Redmond. And on the label for real salt, it does list other minerals that are in it. And I do believe that all of these are, what should I say? What's the word I'm looking for here? Conservative. I believe that the numbers are probably quite a bit higher than this. This is just the bare minimum. If their salt were to be tested, they could find at least these amounts. It also does say right there on the label that real salt contains numerous other trace minerals in minute quantities. I love the flavor of this salt, and for me it's an easy one to pick up because Butterfly carries it both in this 10-ounce shaker jar and in a gallon bucket. So I have a couple of shaker jars, and I just keep them full from the gallon bucket, and that to me is an easy way to keep my salt up. Now, I want to talk about Morton salt, and this is just salt you can just walk into the grocery store and pick it up today. Morton salt has one major claim, and that is that they are adding iodine to it. This actually started in the 1920s, and it started in Switzerland, and then it quickly moved into the United States. They started doing this because iodine, a lack of iodine, I should say, causes thyroid problems and goiters, and they were seeing such an increase of them that they started supplementing the iodine to reverse some of that. And they've been doing this for nearly 100 years. It's a very interesting process or practice. I think it's a great thing. I don't use a lot of Morton salt. And if I were going to do it, it would be for that iodine. I don't like the flavor as well, and I get my iodine from other sources. We are going to talk about iodine. It is one of the minerals on today's docket. But one thing that we are going to do is talk about salt and potassium. And we talked about salt quite a bit, but what you need to understand about salt and potassium is that these two, they need to be balanced in the body. If the body has more potassium than salt, it's going to dump the potassium to match the level of salt that it has. So if you have more salt than potassium, you're not going to get the benefits of it, even if you need it, because the body can't use it without potassium. So this would be why the teacher gave me that advice to increase my fruits and vegetables. This would be because potassium is found in all fruits and vegetables. If you eat the rainbow and you don't seem to be getting the nutrition that you need, it could simply be that you don't have enough salt, so your body can't use it. And if you don't have enough salt, remember your body's not producing hydrochloric acid and you're not digesting your food, therefore you're not picking up the nutrients that you need as well. So it's very important that salt and potassium be balanced and that we get adequate amounts of both. And we're going to talk about potassium and what it does for the body. But if you get nothing else out of this class, then that you need to eat more fruits and vegetables and you need to salt them in order to increase your salt and potassium, this class will have been a success. We need to eat to live, not live to eat. Please try to focus on getting as many fruits and vegetables into your diets as you can and salt them. Okay, let's talk about potassium. Potassium is a fascinating little mineral. Of course, we know it's found in all fruits and vegetables, but we're going to talk about some superfoods for potassium too. But the main thing that we need to know about potassium is that it runs the nervous system. It is a very important mineral for cardiovascular health. It is also required for the liver to produce bile. It is incredibly important for the liver and the gallbladder because that bile is used to break down foods, particularly fats. Now we're going to have a lovely conversation here. We're going to talk for just a minute about stool. A darker brown stool indicates that your body has enough bile. That's what makes your stool dark. So you can get a gauge of how well your liver and your gallbladder are functioning by the color of your stool. Another thing that you can learn from your stool is if it floats or if it sinks. If it floats, it still contains fats and the body hasn't been able to break those down yet. If it's broken them down and utilized them where they're needed, then it is going to sink. So healthy stool should be dark brown and it should sink. Okay, and this is because potassium breaks down those fats, and so it will indicate to us that we are getting enough salt and we're getting enough potassium if we can keep our poop a dark brown and sinking. It surprises me how much that actually requires. I think I'm eating really, really good and I'm not quite there. At my game a little bit and I'm like, all right, yeah, we're finally winning. It's a surprising amount that the body can handle before it goes, yes, I'm happy. Thank you so much. All right, let's talk about a potassium deficiency when the physical symptoms of it. The first one is low energy levels. Yes, I was a picture of this. I had no energy. And this one, interestingly enough, I had no appetite. I had to remind myself to eat and I had to make myself eat. I didn't want to. I think this is because the body knows it can't digest the food, so it just doesn't want you to give it any more. Burping and gas and swelling of the belly, all three of these would be a sign that you are at least slightly potassium deficient. Visual disturbances can be traced back to a potassium deficiency, as well as muscle discomfort. Emotionally, we're going to talk about what that is like, and they're similar to salt as well. You've got the I just can't take it anymore. There's an apathy or a complete lack of interest. Depression, which is also part of the salt deficiency, but remember these two are linked together in a way that is wonderful to understand. Nervousness, and this would be, remember that potassium runs the nervous system. So your depression, your anxiety, your nervousness, these all make perfect sense with a potassium deficiency. All right, let's talk about the sources of potassium. And we kind of already covered this. We've talked about how it's in all fruits and veggies, but there are some super sources of potassium. And the first one is coconut water. There's a lot of brands of coconut water out there on the market, and I have tried lots. Not all of them probably, but as many as I could get my hands on. I never did find one that I liked. Coconut water is not my favorite way to get potassium. One of my favorite ways to get potassium is with molasses. And molasses also contains iron. Remember that pregnant women are trying to build up that that blood volume, and iron is a necessary part of that. So for me, molasses is a great way to up my potassium if I know I'm potassium deficient. I also like these liquid, I pictured the liquid mineral on all my slides just because it's such an easy way to get your minerals, the liquid minerals. And we're going to talk about why that is, but it's best to get your vitamins and your minerals from the foods that you eat if at all possible. Bananas are a particularly high source of potassium, and I rarely eat bananas. I don't know what it is about bananas, but when I eat bananas, the mosquitoes love me. I live on a little creek bank. We have mosquitoes, even in the wintertime, I swear. And so for me to eat a banana, I'm going to get eaten alive. I like bananas and I will treat myself occasionally, but this is probably not how I'm going to get my potassium up. Um, Salted watermelon, cantaloupe, or any of your other fruits and vegetables, these are great ways to get your potassium because you're also getting your salt at the same time. I'm not a fan of salting my fruits. Don't love it. I would prefer to eat my watermelon and then go have a glass of salt water. But you can do you. And my husband loves salted watermelon, so it's definitely something to consider, and to each their own. Okay, let's talk about iodine. I promised that we would. Remember, iodine is the mineral that is being added to salt, particularly the ones that you buy at the grocery store. If you're using a Himalayan salt or a Celtic salt, or even your green salts, or any of those, you might consider that you need to supplement some iodine or make sure you're getting it from your diet. Iodine became really, really well known for its disinfectant properties. They use it in milk barns to disinfect before they milk. That's all well and good, but iodine's main claim to fame is that it is required by the thyroid to produce thyroxine. And thyroxine is a hormone that controls many functions of the brain, including acuity and mental alertness. An iodine deficiency is typically seen as an enlargement of the thyroid gland. This is known as a goiter. In an extreme case, iodine can cause dwarfism, but they say that even a mild case of iodine deficiency can cause a loss of mental acuity. They consider it as the leading preventable cause of mental retardation. So a small deficiency in a pregnant woman or an infant can lower IQ scores by 10 to 15 points. It's very important that we're getting our iodine so we can think. A lot of times for adults, an iodine deficiency will be seen as brain fog. So we got our, I forgot to push my slides, haha. It is estimated, though, that about 2 billion people suffer from an iodine deficiency in the world, and the real tragedy is that it's a condition that's really readily preventable. The addition of potassium iodate or iodine to salt, it costs about $1.15 to add that 45% to salt. It adds it to about a ton of salt, and that solves the problem. To me, iodine deficiency it's really sad that it's so prevalent in spite of the fact that we've been adding iodine to our salt for almost 100 years. So I don't use a lot of salt with iodine in it, but I do get quite a bit from my diet because the list of things that, I guess, the list of things that iodine is contained in are the things I like to eat, so that helps me out a lot. But you will see anxiety, and of course you're always going to see depression. Anxiety and depression are kind of a hand-in-hand thing, and they come from the minerals that are feeding the nervous system. So potassium is hugely important, but iodine is also important as well. All right, your sources of iodine. These are the things I like, remember? I love fish. I love to eat fish, and I love to eat shrimp. Cod is okay. I'm not a huge fan of seaweed, though, but seaweed does contain mass amounts of iodine, and there's a tincture we're going to talk about towards the end of this when we're talking about the best ways to get minerals, and one of the 3 ingredients in it is a form of seaweed called dulse. And it does contain high amounts of minerals, and iodine is one of those. So it's a great way to get iodine if you are deficient. It's also in all of your dairy products, particularly yogurt and eggs would be very high in your iodine. All right. Calcium and magnesium. Now, with salt and potassium, you notice that there was this interplay going on, and you had to have salt in order to absorb potassium, potassium in order to absorb salt. You got kind of the same thing going on here with these next two, and so while we're going to talk about them individually, we're going to start by talking about them together. Calcium and magnesium are very, very important minerals, and a lot of us just, we're not getting enough of them. They need each other to be absorbed, and they need each other to work in the body. You're going to find that minerals often work this way. You'll be deficient of one because you're not getting enough of something else. And so just starting to take that mineral won't necessarily solve your problem, because you may be getting enough of it in your diet, but you're not absorbing it because you're not taking the things that the body needs in order to absorb it. And so you up your amount of it that you're taking, and you're still not able to absorb it. So a lot of women will supplement magnesium because it's known that a lot of women are magnesium deficient. But if they're not also taking a calcium supplement, they might not be absorbing the extra magnesium that they're taking. There's also this really mean interplay here. It's really hard to find a source of calcium that doesn't come from our food that is absorbable by the body. Calcium is particularly difficult to be absorbed by the body. And the scary thing about calcium is when it's not absorbed by the body is it's stored in the kidneys, and the kidney often turns that into kidney stones. So they will tell women that they should take magnesium supplements, and gets kind of scary. I'm gonna use this slide to kind of go through it. But what WebMD says is that women need over 350 milligrams. Well, they say that over 350 daily milligrams is possibly unsafe. Okay, that's important. And that if you get too much, it can cause an irregular heartbeat, and it can cause low blood pressure. Okay, over 350 milligrams daily is possibly unsafe. It can cause confusion, it can cause slowed breathing, and it can cause coma and death. So pretty serious. We don't want to be taking too much magnesium. But what's interesting is the recommended dosage for women is 360 milligrams a day. So I know you can't see that because my picture's right over the top of it, but it just says dosage for women. Very, very interesting. So I don't believe you can eat too many foods that contain magnesium. The body can store it as long as it's not a synthetic form. So I found these numbers really, really interesting, but I don't worry about it. I take magnesium supplement as a liquid, and I really don't worry about taking too much because I'm taking it with calcium so that it can be absorbed, a liquid form that won't cause kidney stones, and I'm also taking it in a form the body can easily slough back off. So to me, it's important to make sure that you know your sources of magnesium and calcium. All right, let's talk about magnesium and what it does. Magnesium supports normal nerve and muscle function, and it aids in digestion. And I was going to say this back when we were talking about calcium magnesium, but I forgot. I got a lot on my head. This is a big class. But calcium, and I may get this backwards so I don't have my notes, but calcium, I believe, is used, make sure I get this right. Calcium is used to constrict muscle. So when I clench my hand like this, or when I step on my foot and all the muscles in my legs tighten up, that is using calcium. In order for the body to release that, or when I step off my leg to not get a Charlie horse or whatever, that's using magnesium. So they're interplaying in the body. So magnesium supports and aids normal nerve and muscle function. It also aids in digestion, and it does this by activating enzymes for protein and carbohydrate metabolism. Magnesium is what is used by the body to relax you into a deeper state of sleep. So if you're fighting insomnia and you're able to get to sleep, but you wake up and you feel like, I just didn't sleep well, that's a sign of a magnesium deficiency. Magnesium also supports normal heart and liver function, and also hormones that are used to reproduce. To help reduce inflammation in their muscle and joints. And so magnesium is incredibly important for those nerves and muscle functions. Hugely, hugely important. But it's also used to help us sleep. Now think about it. If you're never getting to that REM level of sleep, you're never sleeping well, what other things in your health are going to be affected by it? A lot. But magnesium, we can't possibly go into it today, but magnesium is used by over 300 body processes. So nerve and muscle function are what it's really well known for, and it's huge, and it can truly help us sleep a ton better. But of those 300 processes, I don't even know how I would decide which ones to talk about and which ones are the most important. But magnesium is hugely important in the body, and it needs calcium to be absorbed. That's important, and we're going to come back to that a little bit. So we talked about aiding in digestion and helping us to break down proteins and carbs. And deeper sleep. I forget to push my slides. You guys are just going to have to forgive me. I'm sorry. To reduce inflammation. And it also helps build a healthy immune system. It's a good thing I do go through my slides eventually. Okay, it's also used for the formation of DNA and RNA. So, like I said, it's used in over 300 body processes. It's a very, very important mineral. All right, let's talk about what a deficiency looks like. A magnesium deficiency will look like muscle spasms, Charlie horses, etc. First time in my life with that 6th pregnancy, I did a Charlie horse. I thought I was dying. I had never experienced that before, and I had absolutely no idea what it was, but it woke me up from a sound sleep, and I was screaming my head off. My husband wakes up. He's like, what? I'm like, my leg, my leg. He immediately grabs my calf, starts massaging the heck out of it. And I just looked at him in wonder. I'm like, how did you know to do that? And he looks at me. I kid you not. And he says, it's just a Charlie horse. And I'm like, just a Charlie horse? Like, just nothing. That hurt. That was awful. And I immediately started researching what causes this and what do I need. Because I know I did not want to live the rest of my life doing those. That was awful. So Charlie horses, and it's because the body has enough calcium to constrict the muscle, but it doesn't have enough to release it. So, and you'll typically see magnesium and calcium deficiencies together. Ugh, no fun. Okay, your tremors and your menstrual cramps are a magnesium deficiency. If I am tracking my period and I think about it, I will take magnesium for 2 or 3 days before I start my period. I don't typically do menstrual cramps, but I don't want to. It also tends to help me not to do headaches and constipation, and those are 2 things that I do with my periods, and so I'm actually doing it for those 2, but definitely don't want to do the menstrual cramps either. Fatigue is a sign of magnesium deficiency. Heart palpitations, and high blood pressure. So magnesium is pretty important, and it's important that we get both magnesium and calcium. Emotionally, your magnesium deficiency, I just want to say one word right here, PMS. Watch these. These are fascinating. Everything is too much. Yes, I'm on my period. Can't I just stay home? Overwhelmed. Absolutely. Insomnia. A lot of us, even if we can sleep, don't sleep as well during our periods because it pushes us into that magnesium deficiency. Anxiety and, of course, irritability. Not really a shocker there. Okay, your sources of magnesium. I put my favorite one first. It may not be the best source of magnesium, but it's my favorite one, and that would be chocolate. Unfortunately, it's dark chocolate. The darker the chocolate, the more magnesium that it contains. Lucky for me, I like dark chocolate. But if you don't like dark chocolate, just going out and eating regular chocolate is probably not going to help with your magnesium deficiency. Almonds and walnuts, both of which I absolutely love. Your dark green leafy vegetables, there's a great amount of magnesium there. Now, these would be including things like spinach, Swiss chard, colored greens, kales, turnips, your mustard greens. The teacher of my class, and I've heard this a couple of other places since, I don't know how true it is, and I'd love to ask my mom's opinion on it, but I forgot to do that before this class. The teacher in my class said that spinach needs to be steamed before it's eaten because that releases, I'm gonna slaughter this word, but it's oxalates, which block the absorption of calcium and magnesium. And spinach contains high amounts of oxalates, and so they say to steam it, cook it a little bit before you eat it. This is not true of your Swiss chard, your turnip greens, your lettuce, your dark green leafy lettuces, and things like that. I like spinach, and I'd prefer to eat it raw, but I do try to, when I'm eating it, steam it a little bit to release those oxalates. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it's an interesting thing for sure. So we're talking about sources, and the next one I wanted to talk to you, well, while we're still on this topic of greens. So half a cup of spinach cooked will contain about 78 milligrams of magnesium. But half a cup of Swiss chard is, well, it's about the same. It's about 75. But your colored greens, though you're not, the ones you don't have to steam, they only contain 25 milligrams in half a cup. So you're going to have to eat 3 times as much of them, but you don't have to steam them first. It's just an interesting thought. Your other sources of magnesium would be chicken breast, salmon. See, I'm getting my magnesium right there. I love fish. I could eat fish all day long. It's too bad it's so expensive. Sorry. Avocados are a very high source of magnesium, as is peanut butter. And I'm not a huge fan of peanut butter, but I'm acquiring a taste. Growing up, I guess. I don't know. I never ate a ton as a kid, so maybe that has something to do with it. But all right, let's talk about calcium. The flip side of magnesium. Remember, these two go together. Um, and calcium is the one that's used to tighten the muscles. Magnesium is the one used to release them. So good to know that. But calcium is used to create strong bones and teeth. It also stimulates new cell growth. Now, a lot of people, we associate calcium with strong bones and strong teeth, but we don't realize that it's also part of that new cell growth process. Another thing that calcium does, I'm getting behind myself again, is that it helps to maintain pH in the body, and that is huge for staving off from preventing infections. And they say, I don't know how true this one is either, but they say that if your pH is too high, that your metabolism goes sufficient, it becomes very sluggish very quickly. So maintaining a decent pH seriously helps. And of course, sugar is pushing it the wrong way. So this is why going off of sugar helps us to diet better. But anyway, I could get lost. I go on side trips here all the time. But another thing that the calcium has that's very, very important is that it is required for the absorption of iron. And iron is one of those minerals we're going to talk about today. And hopefully we can keep all these pieces straight together. So calcium is required in order for magnesium to be absorbed, and it's required in order for iron to be absorbed. Iron is actually the next one that we're going to talk about, but I want to talk to you about what a calcium deficiency looks like physically. So we already saw, and bear in mind, because it's so tied together with magnesium, they're going to be very similar. You're going to see can't sleep or you sleep restlessly. One thing that we've been trying, we'll have people and they're like, I've been doing sleep medication, I've been doing this and that, and nothing is helping me. What can I try? And I've recommended this now to probably 15 different individuals. And I've asked them to take liquid calcium and liquid magnesium about half an hour before they go to bed. And almost every single time they come back and they tell me the first night I really didn't notice any difference. The second night, though, I slept like a log. I haven't slept that good in years. That's been almost a universal answer to those two taken together. And here about, I want to say about 2 months ago, Butterfly came out with a new product, and it is called Elderberry Nighttime. They did their elderberry syrup a year ago. This one contains chamomile, passion flower, and I think lavender. And we've had a lot of people that are really liking that for sleep. My guess is if I were to study the attributes of elderberry flowers and elderberry berries, or the lavender, the chamomile, you're going to find sources of calcium and magnesium. But the elderberry syrup has the added benefit of it's an immune builder. So they're getting a lot of other benefits from it, and I think it's a great thing for helping people to sleep. But I keep my calcium and magnesium in liquid form just for when I've had a couple nights in a row I'm not sleeping. I'm like, oh man, maybe you're getting calcium magnesium deficient. Okay, let's see, where are we at? Deficiency physically. So another thing that you'll see is Charlie horses, and this is the same thing with magnesium. Those cramps, those are absolutely not fun. These are calcium and magnesium. And then restless leg syndrome is a calcium deficiency. And bone issues, and this is kind of a osteoporosis. These are calcium deficiencies. We know these things. A calcium deficiency will cause extreme fatigue. Emotionally, gotta love this one. Higher levels of perceived stress. I love that word perceived. It doesn't necessarily mean that there is more stress in your life. You're just not handling it like you used to. Being angry or being quick to anger is a sign of a calcium deficiency. And anxiety. And this one I really think is part of all mineral deficiencies. But okay, your sources of calcium, and I don't think any of these are going to really surprise you either. All dairy, so that would include yogurt, cottage cheese, cheese, all your leafy greens. And the benefit here is that you're also getting magnesium. Your best sources for calcium are your collard greens, broccoli, spinach, and kale. Almonds, and again, you're getting your magnesium. This one was interesting to me. Oranges, they are a great source. You also get quite a bit of vitamin C. So oranges, I think, are a great source of calcium. But one thing to note is that vitamin C is hard to absorb without vitamin D, and vitamin D is something that we typically get from the sunlight, and oranges grow in sunny states. if you are having them shipped in and you're eating a box of oranges at Christmas time is not the best time to get calcium from oranges because your body doesn't have the other things that it needs to break down the oranges. So I like oranges at Christmas time. I just try not to become excessive with them because the body can have a hard time breaking that down. All right. Another note that I've liked, I like period dramas and romance novels from the past, and it seems like they're always getting a glass of warm milk or warm chocolate to help them to sleep. And I find this very interesting because calcium is found in milk, and when they add that chocolate to it, they're adding magnesium, and so this would help them to sleep. Just something I thought that was really interesting, and you can try it. You can have a piece of dark chocolate and a glass of warm milk, and you'll sleep better because you're getting those things that you need from your diet. All right, let's move on and talk about iron. An iron deficiency is one of the most common deficiency diseases in the world. It's common to both men and women. Iron is used in the creation of hormones. It is used by the thyroid gland, and this makes it very, very important for thyroid health. So, iron, along with several other minerals, is necessary for red blood cell formation. It is used by red blood cells to produce hemoglobin, which is needed for transporting oxygen. My mom has a saying. She says, "Where oxygen goes, healing follows." She says that all the time. Iron is a key part of that. In order for your body to effectively move oxygen around, it needs iron. Iron has been nicknamed the energy giver. And that is very true. Without iron, we have no energy. So a deficiency physically looks like varicose veins. This would be because without iron, the walls of your veins become weak. And this sets you up for all kinds of problems. Now, consider what would happen if the walls of your heart became weak, or the blood vessels in your brain. So iron is incredibly important. But another thing that a deficiency causes is pica, and pica is a craving for unusual things. These are usually things like ice or dirt or starch, which for me, when I get iron deficient, I start craving French fries. Thank you very much. Let me just gain 10 pounds eating French fries. Okay, a poor appetite is another sign of an iron deficiency. This is particularly true in infants and children who have iron deficiency anemia. They don't feel like eating. Extreme fatigue, weakness, pale skin can be a sign of iron deficiency. Chest pain, fast heartbeat, shortness of breath, headaches, dizziness, and lightheadedness. These are all signs of an iron deficiency, and I grouped them together because to me they are all indicating problems with the heart. They need to be taken very seriously, and when they present together or along with any of the other signs of heart problems, which would include cold feet, inflammation and soreness of the tongue, brittle nails, and constipation, you really, 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 really need to be getting your iron levels up. Constipation would be because the colon muscles can't constrict enough to push the stool through. So that would be why you see constipation with an iron deficiency. Now let's go to the emotional picture of an iron deficiency. Emotionally, iron plays a very important role in your body in how it makes neurotransmitter called serotonin. If you've ever heard of serotonin, you'll probably know that it's known as the happy hormone. Increasing and stabilizing serotonin levels is the trick to beating depression. And from a mineral standpoint, iron is a key factor to that. Depression seems to be at its peak around February. And I've got some personal experiences with that. To me, depression, I take that very seriously, and I take mineral deficiencies very seriously, and I don't think that minerals can be stressed nearly enough this time of year. An interesting side note, though, is that gratitude releases serotonin into the bloodstream. So when we're serving others, or when we're feeling grateful for the chance to serve others, and we're more aware of our circumstances and the blessings that we have, we're actually releasing that serotonin into our bloodstream, and that is helping us to battle the depression and the anxiety and the things like that are caused by a serotonin deficiency. So I found that very interesting. So it's not going to surprise you, depression and anxiety. But the next one is wariness or hesitance. Yeah, iron deficiency can make you just feel like, I don't know if I dare try that, or how sure I want to. But the next one is schizophrenia, delusions, hallucinations, seeing and hearing things that don't exist, unusual behavior, being disorganized in your thinking or in your speech. These are common problems for iron deficiency, and it can even be to the point where you're paranoid and you have thoughts and voices. So, an iron deficiency is pretty serious. Your sources of iron are interesting. Beef. Beef or any red meat. Although chicken, mussels, and oysters are also high in iron, sardines are not as high as oysters, mussels, but they're still a good option. Your chicken, your liver. Liver is a superfood where iron is considered. And your molasses is a superfood where iron is considered. And this one has the added benefit of also having your magnesium. So molasses is one of my favorite ways to get iron. I have a couple of recipes that I really like to cook that contain molasses. I love gingerbread at Christmas time. It's one of my very most favorite things. But my grandma left me a recipe for Raisin Bran muffins, and they don't contain much sugar. They have honey and things like that, and she would make them for me every time I would have a baby. You can keep the batter in your fridge for up to 6 weeks, and so it's super easy to just take a little bit and put it in a spoon, just make a few muffins. And she would make me that because after a woman has a baby and she's trying to build those blood supplies back up, she needs iron. It's a sweet thing that my grandma always did for me. Spinach. By the way, my grandma had passed away before my 6th pregnancy. She passed away right before my 5th child was born. Just a side note. I miss my grandma sometimes. Spinach is a great vegan option for getting your iron, but it's also in things like lima beans, kidney beans, chickpeas, wheat germ, pumpkin seeds, and dried apricots. These are also ways that people who are trying to eat a meat-free diet can get their iron sources up. Couple of things that you need to know if you're trying to get your iron levels up. And the first one is that an excess iron can cause cirrhosis of the liver, fibrosis, and pancreas, diabetes, and even heart failure. I don't believe that these things are actually caused by an excess of iron, but rather they're caused by not having enough of the things that the iron needs in order to be absorbed and utilized by the body. So we're going to talk about what these things are. Most of them we're going to have talked about today, maybe all of them. They are selenium, copper, zinc, and because I'm sitting on top of it, you can't see, it's vitamin C. So vitamin C, we know, is found in oranges and your citrus fruits. It's also very, very high amounts in rose hips, which is one of my favorite ways to get vitamin C, particularly in the winter when I know I'm not eating enough citrus. So one really cool thing though about iron is that if you start to have a high iron levels, your body is, if you have enough iron in your body is able to produce what's called lactoferrin. And lactoferrin is an interesting little thing. Lactoferrin can hold 300 times its weight in water. And lactoferrin travels around the body and it attaches itself to bacteria. Now, it attaches itself to that bacteria and it says, if you are a good bacteria, I'm going to feed you and help you to grow and help you to strive. Then it'll go and it'll attach itself to another bacteria and it'll say, ooh, you're a bad bacteria, and it will suck all the protein out of that bacteria so that it dies. So it's really important to have our sources of iron up so that we can produce that lactoferrin that is out there killing the free radicals in our body. So, okay, one thing though with this process, so we've got the little lactoferrins running around, you have to have adequate amounts of protein, salt, so that your body has enough water. I mean, 300 times its weight in water, you're going to be using a little bit. So iron is very, very important. Very, very important, and particularly if you are fighting free radicals of any kind. Sorry, the sunlight has decided to hit me strange. Hopefully I can keep going here. Yeah, you need your salt and your potassium in order for that process of lactoferrin to work. Okay, selenium. Selenium is a fascinating little mineral. There are a couple of slides on this one that I'm excited about showing you. Selenium, remember, selenium was one of those minerals that was required for the utilization of iron. Okay, in the area where I live, the soil is known to be selenium deficient. So we're often told with our animals to supplement selenium and to make sure that our salt and mineral blocks contain selenium. And this is because if we don't, our goats are likely to start having early miscarriages, their pregnancies won't go full term, and then if the selenium deficiency gets bad enough in your herd, they'll fail to become pregnant at all. So I think a selenium deficiency in humans is about, we're looking at the same types of things, but I don't think we see it in general populaces. Like they wouldn't say the area where you live is selenium deficiency so much because a lot of our food is trucked in, and so we're not eating necessarily the food that's grown in the soil. But if I were growing my own garden, say, and I were eating most of my vegetables out of my garden rather than buying them from farmers markets and whatnot, I would know that I need to keep my selenium levels up because my soil does not contain the amounts that it should. So selenium plays a huge role in reproductive hormones and in thyroid hormones. It also helps the metabolism to function optimally, and it protects from oxidative damage and infections. Oh, I guess we were supposed to go through all of those. Haha, sorry. I really haven't taught this one for a while. So all these things that we were talking about, now they'll come up as a slide. Okay, so physically, what we see with a selenium deficiency, we see infertility. We start to see muscle weakness. I did have a couple of goats get to the point where their pregnancies just wouldn't progress. I know that they were in labor, and I think we were going to have baby goats any second now, and then the next thing I know, it just kind of petered out. I gave that particular goat calcium, magnesium, and selenium in liquid form. We were able to get the babies here, and then before I got her pregnant again, I made sure that we were getting higher amounts of those things. Other things that you will see with a selenium deficiency would include fatigue, mental fog, interestingly enough, hair loss, and you'll see this in animals as well. Their coats will get really scary looking. I'm going to show you some pictures here. A weakened immune system is another sign of a selenium deficiency physically. Emotionally, you're going to see, shocker here, anxiety and depression. I know we keep seeing these two, but they are particularly with selenium important because selenium, remember, it is affecting those serotonin levels. So selenium is a huge part of depression. Your sources of selenium. Selenium is absorbed in the gastrointestinal tract. So issues with your digestion can affect how much selenium you're able to absorb. Vitamin E is another one that works closely with selenium, and it is needed for selenium to be absorbed. So, but your sources are going to be seafood, organ meats, and Brazil nuts. I haven't seen Brazil nuts in the grocery store for a long time. I really like them. They're sure hard to crack. They're those great big brown ones. They're very hard to get into, but I do like Brazil nuts. And it's interesting that I haven't seen those lately though. Spinach, green peas, beans and potatoes are other great sources of selenium. I think potatoes are my favorite way to get selenium. But interestingly enough, most of us get our selenium from breads and cereals. However, it's not typically because the breads and cereals contain selenium, but they've actually been fortified with selenium, which can be harder for the body to utilize. The less processed our food is, the better it is for us. I could teach an entire class on why it's important to create our own bread, but I'm not going to. I am going to tell you, though, there's a book out there called, what is that book called? Homegrown Flour by Sue Becker. It's on Amazon for 13, 14 bucks, maybe as much as 17 sometimes, but that is an excellent book for understanding. The first thing that she says that kind of pulled me in is that wheat by itself contains 40 minerals by itself. So fascinating read. Poultry, red meat, and eggs are also great sources of selenium. And then you've got your oats, you've got kamut, wheat, and brown rice are also great sources of selenium. I said I was going to show you some fascinating pictures of my goats, but that actually comes up in copper, not selenium. Sorry, but we will get there. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about is zinc. Zinc is a very, very important nutrient, and it is used for wound healing. You can tell that you are zinc deficient when it takes forever for even small cuts to heal. I'm going to fix that. Sorry, but that was driving me crazy and I can't see. So yeah, when you have cuts and wounds that just take forever to heal and you scar easily, it's a very good indication that you are zinc deficient. Zinc is a major player in the creation of DNA and new cell growth. Zinc helps new cells to grow and to multiply, and there are a host of birth defects that can be linked to zinc deficiency. Zinc also helps your immune system and your metabolism to function optimally. One last thing that's worth noting about zinc is that a loss of taste or smell can often be linked to a zinc deficiency. So, forgot all my little slides. Wound healing, infection, scars, the formation of DNA, new cells, immune system, metabolism, and taste and smell. These are all very important things for zinc. Now, a deficiency in zinc, interestingly, loss of appetite is one of the first one that comes up. This is particularly true in infants and in children. So, of course, you got the loss of taste and smell. The hair loss or changes to your hair, including it doesn't grow as fast as it used to, or it's dull, or it just has a lack of body. What isn't normal for your hair could be linked to a zinc deficiency. Slow wound healing, we talked about that one a little bit, and then diarrhea. Yeah, if you are constantly getting diarrhea, it could be linked back to a zinc deficiency. Pica, which we talked about a little bit, in animals that's called cribbing. And animals will eat or chew on just about anything. When they're doing that, it is a zinc deficiency. I did mention that zinc deficiency is linked to many birth defects. So I gave you a list of those, which I'm probably going to have to read since you can't. I'm right in the way again. A small lower jaw, spina bifida, clubbed limbs, webbed toes and fingers, extra limbs and digits, hernias, heart and lung defects. And what you can't see is the and lungs. So zinc is very important. Your source, sorry, we got to do the emotional ones. Zinc affects our mood because it improves our overall well-being. Zinc is a natural antidepressant, so that would make it pretty important. We are seeing way too much depression. But another thing you'll see with zinc is anger and emotional instability. So a lack of zinc can actually be linked to anxiety and aggression. Kind of scary. That emotional instability, kind of a number one reason there to get zinc. All right, yep, the anxiety and aggression. Sorry, I wasn't very organized on that one. Your sources of zinc, fish. I'm gonna go have some fish for lunch. Fish, and then your red meats again. And it's interesting, but we need between 8 and 11 milligrams of zinc a day, depending on whether we're male or female. Now, an adult male will need about 11 milligrams, as do teenage boys, but girls are a little bit lower. We only require 8 to 9 milligrams. Now, one interesting thing about zinc is that our bodies can't produce it. It has to come from outside sources such as diet or supplementation. So it's important that we are eating foods that contain it. You got your fish and you got your red meats. But here's what's interesting. Okay, your fish, a 3-ounce serving of fish will contain about 0.03 milligrams of zinc. But red meat, a 3.5-ounce serving, will contain 4.79 milligrams of zinc. So while you can get zinc from fish, it's definitely not your best source. Yeah, I think we forget that red meat is so important to eat in our diets, and a lot of times we have a hard time digesting it either because we aren't getting enough salt, hydrochloric acid. I didn't used to be much of a meat eater. I rarely ate anything heavier than fish. I couldn't digest it, and I knew it, and I didn't want it. I will find myself craving a hamburger. Somebody just give me a hamburger and put mushrooms on it, or yeah. I've become a red meat eater since I've solved my salt deficiency. Oysters are a great source of zinc, and they are actually considered a zinc superfood. So a 3-ounce serving of oysters will contain about 600% of your daily requirement. Another thing about oysters is that they contain copper, which is where we're headed next. And copper is hugely important. I personally don't eat a lot of oysters. Maybe I need to try to eat more oysters. Okay. Beans and lentils are a source of zinc. Lentils contain more than beans, but nuts are also a great source of zinc, with pumpkin seeds and hemp seeds containing about 3 milligrams per ounce. Your cashews, your sunflower seeds are a little bit lower at 2 milligrams an ounce, but your pecans, your chia seeds, your flax seeds, your Brazil nuts, and even almonds will contain a milligram of zinc per ounce. So, pretty good. Dairy is another great source of zinc. Although I think it's a little bit harder for the gut to absorb it this way, particularly anyone who has a milk intolerance or is lactose intolerant. So definitely something to be aware of, though. Breakfast cereals are often fortified with zinc, but again, you're getting it from a less processed state would be better. But they fortify breakfast cereals now with a lot of vitamins and minerals, so it's something to consider for sure. Your whole grains contain zinc, with oatmeal containing the most. A cup has about 2.3 milligrams, but rice and quinoa are also great sources of zinc. All right, I like oatmeal. I'll eat that quite a bit, so that's probably where I get quite a bit of my zinc. But all right, we're going to talk about copper. Copper is a mineral that is found throughout the body. It helps your body to make red blood cells, and it keeps nerve cells and your immune system healthy. It also helps to form collagen, and it is a key part of bones and connective tissues. Your body will use copper to carry out many important functions, including giving you energy and making connective tissues. It's used to create blood vessels. The number one sign that you're copper deficient, however, will be that your hair will go white or gray. So this explains why people go gray at different ages. And you're also, with a copper deficiency, your hair will be brittle, dry, and coarse. So that makes a copper deficiency pretty distinctive. Dr. Wallach, when he would travel around and teach his seminar, he would always joke that he sees a lot of copper deficiency in this room. It just cracked me up. But with goats, a copper deficiency is very, very distinctive too. And it's actually quite a common one. I've gotten to the point now where I give my goats copper 2 to 3 times a year, and I give it to them as a slow dissolving bolus. It's a very cool looking thing. It's a little capsule full of little metal particles of copper, and you have to get it into their stomach without them chewing on it or biting it. So that's always fun. But they immediately, over the next couple of weeks, they'll start to look like a completely different goat. Now, I learned this from one of my favorite goats. Her name was Tallulah, and she just looked awful, and it just kept getting worse and worse. Sorry, we got to go through all these things we just talked about so I can show you my picture of Tallulah. This is Tallulah. She looked horrible. This picture was taken on 7/7. The day that I realized, and someone said, well, that's a perfect copper deficiency and you should give her some copper. So I gave her copper bolus and I took this picture. This is 12 days later, less than 2 weeks. Same goat. And then the next one was taken on 8/1. So I gave it to her on 7/7, and this would have been 8/1. So we're talking about 3.5 weeks. And she looked like a totally different goat. I couldn't believe it. And that's what made me decide that I was going to make sure that all of my goats get copper from now on, and I try to do it in the fall and in the spring. A copper deficiency physically, we've kind of already talked about this. You know, the number one is gray or white hair, but copper functions as a cofactor and an activator of numerous caproenzymes, and they are involved in the development and the maintenance of the cardiovascular system. So copper helps with the tensile strength of those elastic fibers and the connective tissues and ligaments. So these elastic fibers are found around your arterial walls, and when those arterial walls become weakened, we start to see things like varicose veins. If I can get my slide to work. So it's building up those connective tissues and ligaments, and a deficiency will start to see varicose veins and eventually maybe even aneurysms. Albert Einstein, who was famous for his white-gray hair, guess what he died of? He died of a ruptured aneurysm. So another thing you might see is lightened patches of skin. A copper deficiency has also been linked to mental deterioration. So I wonder if we could increase the absorption of copper early enough, if we couldn't really slow down things like Alzheimer's, if we could find a way for it to be absorbed. Copper is one of those ones that's difficult. It requires a lot of other things in order to be absorbed, but it is so hugely important in the body. It's the number one reason not to become deficient in anything else. So let's talk about the emotional side effects though really quick. You've got extreme tiredness, and then this is the only good one. The rest of them, they just get worse. Violent tempers, bipolar disorders, and also postpartum depression. These are all linked to a copper deficiency. Your sources of copper are interesting. Beef liver, not one of my favorite things to eat, but it contains the most amount of copper per serving of any food. Your oysters, which we talked about with, was it selenium? I think it was selenium. Huge amounts of copper in oysters, as well as mushrooms. And I love mushrooms, so this is probably where I get a lot of my copper. Cashew nuts contain a pretty good supply, as do sunflower seeds, potatoes, dark chocolate. See, I'm going to get my magnesium and my copper at the same time, and tofu, which I've honestly never tried. Now, it's interesting. Our bodies do not require very much copper. In fact, the daily requirement is only 0.08 for a newborn and 0.04 for a toddler. By the time we're adults, we only need 0.03. So it's not that we're not getting it from the things that we're eating. The problem is that we're not absorbing it. Problems from absorbing copper come from anemia, so a lack of iron. Iron is probably the number one thing that you need in order to absorb copper, but zinc is another one that's hugely important. And zinc actually has a nasty reputation for causing issues absorbing copper. If you're supplementing zinc for long periods of time, supposedly this is going to cause a copper deficiency. I don't believe that this is actually the problem. I think if you're using a form of zinc that the body can easily absorb, I don't think that our fortified cereals are quite cutting it. I think that's a harder form for the body to absorb, and that might actually be blocking our copper absorption. But I think if you're getting copper from the foods that you eat, or you're getting copper from an ionic liquid source, that it's not going to block, well, zinc and copper both, it's not going to block your absorption of other vitamins and minerals. That's not how the body works. So that takes us to why I love my liquid minerals. Really, really, really quick, because I know this has already gone kind of long, but I thought about putting this at the front, but I didn't. It wouldn't have meant as much to you, and I really, really wanted to stress to you how important minerals are now, why it's important that we be able to absorb them. So it's generally accepted that when we take supplements or pills, that we are absorbing somewhere between 3 and 20%. And that probably depends on how healthy your digestive system is, how much hydrochloric acid you have for breaking down those pills. There's a lot of factors, but it's generally accepted that somewhere between 3 and 20% of that actually becomes water soluble. Now, the problem is the body can only use things that actually become water soluble. So 80 to 97% of the pills and capsules and tablets that we're taking will pass through our bodies without ever becoming water soluble, and they can't be used by the body, and to me that is a huge waste. What do you think happens to all those vitamins and minerals that are not absorbed? Remember the concern we had about oversupplementing magnesium? Or what happens when we take too much calcium and our bodies form kidney stones? Or think about the zinc blocking the absorption of copper. I think that's because they're coming from synthetic, man-made forms that don't contain the other things that the body needs to absorb them, and so the body, they're actually causing us more issues in the long run. It's better to get our vitamins and our minerals from the foods that we eat, or to get them from water-soluble forms like ionic minerals. If you remember in Dr. Wallach's book, Dead Doctors Don't Lie, he claimed that the average physician lives to be about 55, while the average American couch potato lives to 71. Well, he did some research into what people live the longest, and he found several civilizations that lived to be well over 100 of them. But all of them live in very mineral-rich areas. And what I found interesting was that their main source of minerals was coming from water. Water that was running over mountains or glaciers and picking up mass amounts of minerals. Sometimes the mineral content was so high they would actually call the water glacial milk. None of these people had any signs of oversupplementing their minerals. The minerals that they intake were in a water-soluble form, and I believe that when they supplemented with those, their bodies were able to handle any excess. So God is good, and He has put minerals in our foods and our fruits and our vegetables that are easy to absorb. But if you're going to supplement with minerals, please do it in an ionic liquid form so that they are ready for your body to be used and you don't cause yourself issues with oversupplementing. Does that mean that you can't oversupplement with ionics? I don't think that you can, but I think it's going to be a lot less scary. It's going to be more when you're causing a cleanse, and cleansing too fast can maybe not be very comfortable, but it's not going to be detrimental. I hope that makes sense. When I taught this class back in September, and it's now November, I had been taking quite a few minerals for quite a bit of time, and I had actually caused myself to break out in acne. I knew it's because I was over supplementing and I was taking too much. I had been studying and taking notes for this class for weeks, and I was constantly and daily reminded of how important minerals were, and I was overdoing it a bit, but I caused myself to break out in acne. I taught the class with acne. It wasn't that big of a deal, and in a few days it cleared up. So that's okay. That's just life. Minerals are absolutely wonderful, and there are about 22 liquid minerals that butterfly carries. Now this doesn't include salt, which is one of the ones we talked today. They do have salt. They have this mineral brochure, and you can call and request them to mail you one. If you are placing an order, they'll put it in your order for free. You can buy the 10 packs. I want to say they're $2 for 10 of them. You can share them with your friends. Maybe they're $3. Anyway, this brochure is very handy because it takes all 22 minerals and it gives you a little bit of information about each one. And we talked about some of them today. We didn't talk about boron, but we did talk about calcium. We didn't talk about chromium, and chromium is very important, particularly for pregnant women. Cobalt is another huge one I wish we'd had time to go into. Germanium, gold. Gold is particularly important if you are fighting depression. It's one I recommend to people take for a little while in January, February. Indium, hugely important. We did talk about iron and iodine and magnesium. We didn't get to manganese or molybdenum. We didn't talk about platinum. We did talk about potassium and selenium. Silver is hugely important, and sulfur, while we don't need very much, we do need a tiny bit of sulfur, and it is wonderful. Tin, vanadium, these are other ones that I really hope that you will take some time and study. And the last thing that I really want to say today is I want to tell you a little bit about this formula right here called Min, and it contains alfalfa, which is a superfood, chamomile, dill seed, dulse, horsetail, nettles, oat straw, raspberry leaf, and yarrow. And it is available as a dry herb pack, which you can use to make tea. It's also available as a glycerin. I love this formula. They have it both as a regular tincture and a glycerin. I will give my kids the glycerin, and when I do that consistently, we have less behavioral problems. I got really, really good at it in the course of studying for this class, and over the period of 2 or 3 weeks, I was extremely faithful, and for several weeks on both sides of that, I was pretty good about it. I took my 5-year-old into the dentist right before I taught this class in September, and for the first time came out of the dentist office with a child with a clean bill of health. And I'm not talking the first time for this child. I'm talking the first time ever. I have never taken my children to the dentist and had the dentist say, "No cavities." That was so awesome to me, and I attribute it largely to the fact that she is getting the minerals that she needs through this. I also have my kids on a multivitamin, and I try to give them liquid minerals if I spot something that I recognize and go, oh, maybe you could handle a little more of this or that. Minerals are hugely important. The way they affect our health is hugely important. And I hope that you guys have enjoyed this class. I hope you have learned something, and I hope that it has made you want to understand more about minerals. Please feel free to comment and leave stories about what you have learned about minerals below. Thank you.